Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Casually Current, a Casual Cinemedia podcast Oscar bet winner episode. My name is Chris.
My name's Mike.
And my name's Justin. Casually Current is where we typically watch and discuss current film and television, but today we're doing a movie chosen by our Oscar bet winner.
And my nemesis, Corbin.
In today's episode, we'll be going over what's on our minds in regards to what's going on in the world of movie news and what we've been watching and things like that. And then we will be moving into a feature review of Peter Strickland's Berberian Sound Studio.
And if you want to follow along with what we're watching next and let us know what you think about Berberian Sound Studio, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at casualcinemedia. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/casualcinemedia and talk film with us. Or you can email us directly at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Yes, and don't forget, you don't have much time left for our iTunes review contest. What we need you to do is just go ahead and give us a 5-star review, write a little synopsis of feedback, and then take a snapshot, mail it into Casual Cinemedia or our Facebook group, and we will pick a name at random and let you choose a movie for us to review, much like we are doing today. Yes. So you don't have much time. Depending on when this is, we're recording this on the 25th, so
you have
the
until the end of
31st
March.
is the last day. Yeah.
I think it'll come out on Thursday, which only gives you a couple of days to get your review in and enter in.
Yeah, I forgot time travel is happening. So, yeah. Anyways, the 31st, hurry up.
And before we get into what's on our minds, we wanted to let you guys know that we're helping out a nonprofit called Real Outreach. This is a program that is designed to actually help underprivileged kids who can't afford to go to the movie theater. It affords them the opportunity to go to the movie theater and see big movies that are fun for kids. The first movie up is Avengers Infinity War, which is perfect for this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's about giving these kids who are less fortunate the ability to go, like, escape, and that's what superhero comic book movies are about generally, is to escape and have fun.
Absolutely. Movies are where you're allowed to dream, or people share their dreams with each other, and most of my favorite moments from childhood come from going to movies with my parents. So I think giving some kids this opportunity is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that is Real Outreach, REEL Outreach. And their website is realoutreach.com. So please, give it a visit, give it a look. It's well worth your time, and it's a great cause.
Indeed.
All right, moving on with the show.
Yep, let's move into what's on our minds. And before we get into our individual personal ones, we wanted to talk about a piece of news about Netflix movies and the festival Cannes, or Cannes.
Or Canes.
Or Cannes. The big one in France that most people who are into film know about, have declared that Netflix original movies will not be eligible for submission for Cannes.
Yeah, and that's actually the same week that Spielberg... Did you guys see what Spielberg said about Netflix movies?
I did.
Yeah, so just for anyone who's listening who didn't see that, Steven Spielberg just this week, like a day before Cannes announced this, I think, said that he doesn't believe that Netflix movies should be eligible for Oscars. He said they should be eligible for Emmys. What do you guys think about that?
I think if you want to get really technical about it, he's not wrong.
No.
Because Netflix is made to be consumed on your television or your laptop or phone or whatever, which I would consider in the same realm as television.
Sure. Do you think that this is just an example of people like Spielberg and whoever made the decision at Cannes? Do you think this is just them basically just fighting the inevitable?
I would say that they have a point. And you're right that I think that it may be inevitable, but they have a point. Netflix, for the Cannes Film Festival, did the bare minimum in order to get Okja, that's the name of the movie? Okja, eligible for the Cannes Film Festival. They did the bare
Film Festival?
Did I just
You've called it...
I've called it all three at this point.
I think of the fast food restaurant Raising Cane's.
Anyways, they did the bare minimum in order to get eligible for the festival. I mean, my personal preference is that they just release them and let it, and then put it on Netflix. I know that they have a different system in place, And I would much rather have seen Oakjaw on the big screen than on Netflix. How do you guys feel about that specific, like having the opportunity to see it in the theater or watching on Netflix? Which one would you prefer?
Well, I think a lot of times what Netflix is doing is like they're releasing them in like really limited theatrical runs. Like I think if you just, in the case of the Oscars, I think you just have to release it like at least 1 or 2 weeks.
It has to be
in like LA or New York or something like that. I don't know about Con exactly, but it seems like Netflix is basically just gaming the system.
Yeah,
So
I would
like,
agree.
yeah, so it seems a little crappy for those companies who started with these festivals, who are theatrical companies who like make their money and their bread and butter off like theatrical releasing, right? Like it seems a little crappy to just say like times are changing, let us into this cool club that you guys have had this whole time. You know, I don't know. I can see their point basically, but also at the same time, I know movie theaters are going the way of the buffalo, so it's like,
well, they're just going to do the bare minimum in order to get into the festivals. And you're right, movie theaters. This has been the worst March in like a very long time for cinema.
It's been the worst like past 12 months.
Yeah,
in a long time.
Which is disheartening, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think there'll always be movie theaters, though.
Well, the thing about having a bare minimum requirement of screenings in order to get eligible for the Oscars, if you don't have that bare minimum, then the smaller movies that can't afford a big theatrical release are no longer going to be eligible for the Oscars. So while Netflix is maybe gaming the system with things like Okja, which could get a theatrical release on its own merits, and there may be a company that would pick it up. What about a really small film, like some of these, like, you know, foreign films or the documentary films that aren't going to get a wide release? Like you're hurting some other people. I think there's collateral damage if the Oscars were to make that rule or change like these bare minimum requirements. Right.
Well, that's why I think the Cannes Film Festival just eliminated Netflix altogether, because they're not playing. They're gaming the system. They're just going to release their episode. Like, for instance, you have a movie, you know, like that may not get a wide release, but if it got like a week, you know, you could be eligible for these festivals type things, right?
Well, what defines a Netflix original, I guess, would be the question, because some of the movies that they've bought and released as a Netflix original, was Okja always a Netflix original produced movie, or is it something that was made and then Netflix purchased it and released it under Netflix originals, much like Meyerowitz stories?
Right. So then it just becomes a question of like, okay, you need to sell your movie. Netflix is offering to buy it, but if I buy it, it will be considered a TV movie. That is just something that young filmmakers or whoever makes the movie is just going to have to decide to themselves personally. What's more important to me, an Oscar or being eligible for an Emmy?
Right. I do believe both those movies, though, before they went into the Cannes Festival, were Netflix-owned films. It wasn't that they had purchased them afterwards.
Yeah. Right. But a lot of times Netflix does exactly what Justin's saying, though, and they'll just buy a movie. I
mean, along with Amazon and a lot of other companies.
Right, and sometimes that's the best option for people to see your movie. Is it the end of the world if your movie is not eligible for Oscars, if you got to sell it for $4 million or $5 million to Netflix?
Right, you're still eligible for Emmys, right?
So I don't know. I hear what you're saying, Justin, in the sense that like sometimes it hurts smaller movies, but I think, you know, that's just the dice you roll when you get into making movies. Sometimes you're going to have to realize that you're probably not going to win an Oscar and you probably shouldn't strive to. But if you think your movie's got a shot, don't sell it to Netflix, I guess.
Right, and I guess the other side of it is, are the festivals like Cannes or if Oscars did decide to like exclude Netflix movies, right, are they just kind of ignoring a medium that's coming out that's going to be more and more dominant? Like eventually, is it going to turn into only like the biggest, you know, blockbuster movies are eligible for Oscars because the other ones are too small to get theatrical releases, or they are supported more and more by things like Amazon and Netflix? Like, you know, we wouldn't have had Mudbound this year, right, as an Oscar contender, and out of that we got like the best female cinematographer. And it's a movie, it's a TV movie, but it's still, I don't know. To me, I think it's getting a little bit nitpicky about something that's inevitable, are going to inevitably be the mainstream.
Sure, but if they go along with it, they're only helping to ensure the demise of movie theaters and the entire way of doing things in the Hollywood system earlier. So, like, you can't really blame them for wanting to try to hold on to the remnants of, like, what was, you know, what it used to be, what it's been for so long. Like, I think they'll inevitably adapt to the online format. They'll have to, because online stuff's is the way of the future, right? And movie theaters are not.
I think what we're missing here, too, is there's a happy medium. Like Manchester by the Sea was owned by Amazon, and it was released in theaters for long enough to be, I mean, where it wasn't gaming the system, right?
Right. Well, look at Lost City of Z. Amazon did the same thing with that. I was able to see that in a small town like Tyler, Texas. So
right. So I think that there's a happy medium where Netflix releases these movies.
Yeah, Netflix just has to stop being so stingy and start paying for some theatrical releases to play the game right.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, even if you release the movie on Netflix at the same time you release it in the theaters, give us that option. Give us that choice, you know?
Well, hang on a second. That's the thing. Theaters won't agree to it, though, as long as Netflix is releasing it simultaneously. Netflix needs to stop being stupid and say, okay, this gets 3 months of theatrical release only, and then it's available everywhere on Netflix. That is what theaters cannot get on board with. They cannot get on board with the idea of something premiering the exact same time that you can watch on Netflix that you can also watch in theaters, because no one in their right mind is going to pay $14 to go pay to sit with a bunch of strangers who are loud and annoying versus watching something in their own home. Like, we may like it because we're movie nerds, but average Joe movie watcher is going to choose to stay at home where they can pause the movie and go take a crap. You know?
The other thing about Netflix is that things come out and pass through the cultural mind. You know, they are no longer culturally viable. Like Altered Carbon came out, and I haven't heard anybody talking about that. Maybe it's not worth talking about. Or
yeah, it had like a week of buzz, and that's
where people talked about it. And
Mike talked about it on this podcast.
Yeah, well, exactly. But
I stopped after episode 2, though.
See? Ooh. And nobody else is really talking about it, and it's not... It's just those movies are released and go away so quickly.
Yeah, so it seems like it would help Netflix more to release them in theaters and then be like, look, it's going to be in theaters for 3 months. If you don't see it, it'll be on Netflix. But at least it's part of the conversation. At least there's some buzz around it. The media's talking about it. And it's not just like one of those things that just gets dumped on Netflix and forgotten about.
Yeah, if you want to see it now and not have it spoiled and be part of like the current mood and the current conversation, go to theaters. Yeah, it makes sense.
Or, you know, maybe cut down the turnaround time between the premiere at theaters and the premiere on Netflix. Give them a month and a half instead of 4 months or whatever it usually takes.
Yeah.
Before digital release, you know? I don't know.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing in regards to like the Oscars, and I want to say like the sanctity of the movie theater, even though that's not quite what you said, and I'm not necessarily sure that's what the Oscars think. But most Oscar films, when they're sent out for awards or votes, they're sent out on DVD screeners.
That's true.
Right?
Most people watch them like standard definition.
Yeah, so they're being viewed in standard definition at home on your laptop or whatever. So even the movies that are eligible for Oscars, the voters are watching them
at home
on a DVD. So
yeah, that's
they're not necessarily saving the theaters or encouraging.
There's a bit of hypocrisy going on.
Right, but in theory they are.
Yeah.
Because average Joe movie watcher doesn't get screeners, you know, but...
You don't get screeners, Mike?
No, I don't. Well...
Oh.
Yeah, no, I don't.
This is to be continued, because this will be a thing that will never end until there aren't any movie theaters or there's no more Netflix.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting to see who else will follow suit if it becomes a thing for, like, Sundance or Toronto and how far down like the film festival chain this sort of thing goes.
Actually, with Sundance, it is more of independent movies that get picked up afterwards by Netflix or Amazon and then released. Aren't there some movies that have already been from Sundance that have been released on Netflix this year?
This Sundance?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but...
Netflix makes it so hard to keep up with the movies, too. Yeah. So because they just release it and then they don't say anything.
The Gus Van Sant movie is coming out relatively soon in theaters, right? Yeah. The You Were Never Really Here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's my biggest problem with this Netflix thing. Is like, I don't necessarily care if it premieres on Netflix and doesn't go to a theater, although I wish it would. I mainly care that just like they just unceremoniously dump stuff. And and who knows all the cool crap that's on Netflix that I'm just never going to watch because it doesn't pop up for me, or I just don't know it exists, or I've never heard anyone talk about it.
Yeah, it's not part of the conversation, so you don't realize it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. You guys want to move on?
Let's do it.
Okay. Mike, do you want to go first with what's on your mind?
Sure. This week, I actually watched The Greatest Showman, starring Hugh Jackman, directed by Michael Gracie. Have you guys seen this movie?
I have not.
Nope, I have not.
Yeah, it's not very good. I gotta say, I don't know, it's about P.T. Burnham, the man who made The Circus, right? Like the famous...
Barnum and Bailey.
Yeah, so it's basically about how he got his start, and it's a musical but with like modern day music to it. And anyway, just...
Similar to Moulin Rouge?
No. Moulin Rouge, like, I don't like Moulin Rouge that much, but Moulin Rouge, it looks like Singing in the Rain compared to this movie. No, like, this feels more like more modern, less interesting music.
Okay.
My girlfriend likes the music a lot, but it's not for me. It feels like radio type music, like something Bruno Mars would sing or something. I don't know. But man, this movie's a mess. Like, I feel like the whole time they're trying to, what's the word? Like, make P.T. Barnum look good, like a hero.
Yeah.
And the whole time he's going through the motions of like taking disfigured people and exploiting them for like personal gain, right? And so the movie tries to spin it like, oh, you gave us a family and a place to belong. But the whole time I'm thinking like, this guy's terrible. and I want nothing good to come to him. But anyway, Hugh Jackman's very talented, man. He can sing, he can dance. He's the whole package. He's great in this movie. But the movie is just a big mess, in my opinion.
Well, that's been my hesitation towards watching it, is the positive portrayal of someone who obviously exploited people, as you said.
Yeah, and is terrible.
So I don't know how I feel about that, and I don't know that I'll ever watch it, but I do like a musical.
Me too.
Modern musicals less so, but I still want to see something that,
yeah, and I bet
a modern, like, full-on musical. Cause
something that I'm not going to have to like morally reckon with the whole time.
Yeah, I would prefer that for sure. But this is like a full-on musical, right? It's not something that's kind of like a hybrid.
Nope.
Like
full-on musical.
La La Land is a bit more of a hybrid.
It's like it's a musical, but not in the same style of La La Land because it's very obviously like lip syncing.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like La La Land's not a full-on musical. It's more of like a movie that has musical. It has some musical numbers, but it doesn't feel like
it kind of forgets it's
huge.
A musical for a little bit. The Greatest Showman does no such thing. There is a song all the time, but the problem is, in my opinion, none of the songs, with the bar maybe one or two, right? They aren't that memorable. There's a couple in there, but
it's not like Les Mis, right, where they don't sing the whole time.
No.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's more polished than that, but overall, I do not recommend it in the least. Like, I don't know, if you liked Greatest Showman, anyone listening to this, email me and let me know why I'm wrong. But I find it just morally, more than anything, morally repulsive.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it really rubbed me the wrong way, this P.T. Barnum idolization. So the other thing that I've been watching is a comedy that came out, and it wasn't even on my radar. I didn't even know about it. But then I just heard so much word of mouth, and that is Game Night. Have you guys heard of or seen Game Night?
Heard of, but not seen.
Same.
Oh, man,
I haven't even seen a trailer.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's kind of like a Horrible Bosses kind of vibe to it. It's starring Jason Bateman, Rachel McAdams, and Kyle Chandler, whom...
Yeah, Kyle Chandler's good in everything.
I love that guy. That guy's great.
I'm not sure who that is. Remind me.
The dad in Super 8, the FBI agent in Wolf of Wall Street. He looks like a really nice man.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He just looks like a nice guy.
He's always the guy from that show that used to come on after my grandma would watch Touched by an Angel. It was called like Early Edition.
Oh, Early Edition. I watched that.
Do you remember that show?
Was so good.
Was it?
I remember loving it. I was young when I saw it, but I loved it. But he's better, and I don't know if either one of you guys have seen it. Friday Night Lights. Have either one of you guys watched Friday Night Lights?
No, I hear it's great though, but man, it does not interest me based on the premise.
It's not great. Parts of it aren't great, I guess I should say. But Kyle Chandler is amazing in it. You wish that you had him as your coach or your teacher when you were a kid. Anyways, that's a quick sidebar. Back to game night.
Yeah, no. Anyway, look, game night. It's not great, but it's worth a sit. It's really charming, and I will be vague, but basically, it's about a couple who meets because they are both really competitive and good at games of all kinds. Like, there's like a montage at the beginning of the movie where they get in, like they meet each other over Dance Dance Revolution and like trivia and things like that, and they bond over that. So it's kind of fun to see that relationship. And I guess the breakout star of this movie would be Jesse Plemons. Do you guys know who Jesse Plemons is based on the name?
Yes.
Also from Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's in Friday Night Lights. He's in Breaking Bad. He was in Fargo season 2. He's been
Master.
The Master. He's been in a lot of stuff. He's really great.
He's actually a friend of mine that is an alumni from where we went to film school. Mike has a movie called Flutter that's on Netflix, or at least it was on Netflix, and he is one of the main characters in that.
Small world.
So I'm going to plug that movie for him. It's called Flutter.
Neat. But Jesse Plemons is so funny in this movie. He is like the cop neighbor who has recently undergone a divorce, but they were mainly friends with like his divorced wife. So he's kind of like been on the outs from like the game night group. And he's been trying to like come up with ways to ingratiate himself back into the group. And it's pretty comical. I'm not going to lie. There's a really great scene with Jesse Plemons that makes me laugh. So anyways, if you're in for a pretty decent comedy, go see Game Night. It's not great, but it's better than most Jason Bateman comedies.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see that one. I've been meaning to get to it, but I haven't yet.
Yeah, I think the last Jason Bateman comedy I really liked was the first Horrible Bosses. I never saw 2, but
me too.
What's that other film that he did? It was Bad Words about like the spelling bee.
I didn't see it because it looked like a Jason Bateman comedy.
Yeah, it was not very good. So
yeah.
Hopefully it's a return to form.
In the right, the return to form. The thing is, like, I think he never doesn't go to his form. I think it's a real hit and miss form. He has to be in the right thing, you know? Like Arrested Development, great. Horrible Bosses, pretty funny. Game Night, good. You know, Teen Wolf 2, excellent. But everything else,
right?
You know, I don't know.
He never really plays a different character. He's always kind of
and I don't know if that's his fault.
No.
Oh, wait, he was in a thriller like a year ago. What was it?
The TV show.
No. The Gift. He was in a movie like last year or the year before called The Gift. Have you guys seen that?
No.
I haven't either, but it had really decent reviews, and he's on the cover looking not comedic.
On the cover?
Yeah, he's holding a gift.
That doesn't sound funny, even though Chris is laughing.
So anyway, Game Night's pretty good. If you've seen The Gift, let me know if that's good too.
All right.
All right.
So Chris, you're up next.
All right, yeah. So there's a couple of new things that came out this week that I was interested in. I went and watched Unsane from Steven Soderbergh.
I saw that too.
Yeah, all right, we can talk about it.
But not too much, because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, no spoilers for Justin. But yeah, it's from Steven Soderbergh, shot on an iPhone exclusively, and you would have more probably to tell me about the iPhone. But I didn't really notice a big difference in quality or anything. But it's about a lady that gets, I don't know how far to go into it's about a girl that has a stalker, essentially.
Yeah, that's more than I knew going into it. I literally did not know a single thing about this plot.
Yeah, I hadn't seen a trailer for it either. When I go see a movie, there are a few things that make the choice. Like Steven Soderbergh is always a good sit. He's worth a good sit, even if the movie's not great. I'm always willing to give him a chance.
Sure, me too.
And then, the fact that it's shot on iPhone was an interesting point. And it's also got Claire Foy in it. She's in The Crown, if you guys have seen that. Which
I have not. I was wondering what she was from. She looked familiar, but I have not seen The Crown.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is a good movie. It's not great, but definitely
it's a pretty decent little thriller.
Yeah, especially if you don't know anything going in. I think that really adds to it.
Yeah.
So, Mike, tell me about did it look less in quality because it was shot on an iPhone, or?
Yeah, so I didn't know that going in. Well, I guess I had heard there's a movie coming out that was shot on an iPhone, but I wasn't thinking that's what I was going to see. You know, within 15 minutes, I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then I was like, "Oh, this is it. Okay, I understand." Because there are times where the iPhones are so small and light that they don't weigh anything. So like the camera work is really clunky.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're trying to pan left instead of like just a smooth pan, it's like it's real jerky, because I guess like an iPhone is probably hard to be real smooth with because it doesn't weigh anything. There's another like scene where two characters, it's near the very beginning of the movie, where two characters sit at a table, and like the camera is very clearly like strapped to the table to give them like a wide shot of the room of these two people sitting at the table. And like when one character like sits down and like puts his hand on the table to like balance himself while he's sitting down, it shakes the whole camera. So it's definitely very noticeable, especially like if there's some day for night stuff in the movie. But that being said, you acclimate pretty quick. It looks like a good movie. You know, it looks like an indie movie. So, you know, iPhone cameras, you could do worse, I guess. As long as you film it in 24 frames per second, which like he clearly did, then it looks watchable for sure.
Yeah, good, easy, cheap way to get your movie made, I imagine.
Well, I'm curious because there have been things that have been shot on the iPhone before, but they had attachments where they could use additional lenses.
Oh, yeah, I wonder. I'm sure there was something like that.
Yeah, I would guess that they had that sort of stuff so they could use different lenses and not the standard lens. And they probably have something to like keep the iPhone from automatically bumping up gain and automatically focusing.
Right, like some kind of third-party app to like strip some of the default settings from the camera.
Yeah,
maybe.
So I don't think you and I could go out and
sure
and do the same thing with our like standard.
I also don't know
stock
if
iPhones.
We could convert it to 24 frames per second either.
That too.
Yeah,
so that might just be like But I know the director of Old Boy and Stoker, Chan-wook Park, he actually filmed a short film on an iPhone a few years ago.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't. Well, I saw parts of it, and it was like not good looking at all. That was back a couple iPhone generations ago. But yeah, Tangerine wasn't the first. So this is going to be more and more prominent as time goes on. So I'm sure it's not long before someone figures out how to like tell everyone how to do this kind of stuff.
I think especially it's great for smaller independent films where you can get your film made, and if it's good enough, it doesn't matter what it's shot on, like Clerks or whatever. So would you say is this a good movie to go watch? Do you recommend it?
I would definitely give it a shot. It's probably the best movie out in wide release right now. I don't think there's much else to watch, but it's not a great movie. There are some things that made me mad, especially with the main character, some of her actions, but overall, it's a really good thriller. It's really tight.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's worth going to see. Take a look-see.
Yeah, if anything, just to see Steven Soderbergh back in form doing something cool. I like it better than I liked. What was that movie he came out with?
Logan Lucky?
No, I liked that one okay. It was back before his like retirement, quote unquote. The action movie with the girl. With Michael Fassbender, and she fought Michael Fassbender in the trailer.
Haywire?
That movie's not good.
I've not seen it. I bought it for like $1, so I have it sitting at home.
I think
like
this movie filmed on the iPhone looks better than that movie. That movie is ugly.
The things I like about Soderbergh, he's always, or it feels like he's always pushing the envelope, and that's whether the end product is better for it necessarily is not always true, but I like the idea of always pushing the envelope.
Sure. So, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's Unsane, Steven Soderbergh. It should be in theaters near you guys.
Yeah, give it a watch.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is Barry. It's a new HBO show with
Bill Hader.
Yeah, Bill Hader in it.
Cool. Is it good?
I only watched the first episode, so I think it's going to need a couple more episodes to really get good. I wasn't completely sold on the first episode. There were aspects of it that I liked, but I think there was a lot of establishing of plot and characters.
Is it like a dramedy or a straight up comedy?
It's a dramedy. There's a couple of things at the end that really kind of sold me on that I want to see the next one, just to see what happens, because like to see it get more crazy is what I think is going to happen. In fact, I watched it with Justin this afternoon. So, hello. Justin, what did you think?
I was not that into the first episode, to
right?
be totally honest, but I agree that it may take a few episodes to really get its hooks in you.
Mm-hmm.
The premise of the show is that Bill Hader plays a former Marine who is now basically a hitman, and he goes to perform like a hit in LA where he stumbles across like an acting class and then gets the acting bug and wants to become an actor.
He's essentially a depressed hitman, and he doesn't feel like there's any purpose in life.
Right. And I was actually really into everything that was him wanting to become an actor and like the acting classes and that sort of thing. But everything that involved him being a hitman and I guess that side of his life felt sort of just like average to me, like really, really average and uninteresting. So I don't know. I'll have to see how it goes and like how much like the content of the show like tips in favor of him doing the acting stuff, because I thought the acting stuff was really interesting.
Yeah, the acting stuff is really interesting. The assassination part, you're right, wasn't as interesting. I don't think it's supposed to be as interesting until the very end. Some stuff happens, and I think that got more interesting, where that world's going to blend in with his acting world, and there will be drama to be had. So I would recommend watching the first episode, or maybe wait 3 weeks in and then watch the first 3 episodes together and see whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I will say that the first episode, I don't think it made me laugh, maybe once.
Is it an hour or is it 30 minutes?
It's 30 minutes.
Oh, that's doable.
Yeah, so it's easy to watch, like, and even if you're not liking it, it's over before you know it. But I'll just say for a dramedy, I didn't laugh, or I didn't really find anything funny. A few of the attempts at humor I didn't think were funny, but that may just be me, and they may kind of find their groove and get into it, a little bit more.
I can't think of many first episodes that really hook me.
Yeah.
And I didn't like Arrested Development when I watched the pilot on its own the first time.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that this is one, at least the first episode, that you laugh out loud. Like, I found amusement in it, but I never laughed out loud either. But I think it's a show where you chuckle, quietly to yourself.
Yeah, no, well, I don't mean that I didn't laugh out loud. I mean, I didn't chuckle, not even to myself in my brain. I was just like, oh, that's not funny. Or nothing funny happened that was supposed to be funny. I don't know. It's just, I thought it was going to be more funny because I've seen the commercial, and it wasn't as humorous as I thought. Maybe it's a little bit heavier on the drama of the dramedy.
I think a lot of the humor will come later on in the two worlds mixing together, the hitman world and the acting world.
Right.
So, all right, that's me. What is on your mind, Justin?
Yeah, so first I wanted to talk about The Office, the American Office, because my girlfriend and I have been watching through it for the last couple months, and we finished the series, which I finished it once before, and this was my second time to watch through it. And the main reason that I wanted to bring it up and talk about it is because I think on this podcast, perhaps once I said that the last season 9, was not very good and was pretty bad, and I want to change my tune because I think it's actually pretty good. There's a good bit of funny stuff that goes on in it. There are a few elements that I think are really, really bad, but they are kind of minor in hindsight. Like, I remembered them being a lot more prominent and a lot more throughout the season than they actually were.
Is one of them where the sound guy breaks the fourth wall and starts kind of an affair with Jenna Fisher's character?
Yeah. And that's the worst part about it. And I think I can spoil it because it's been over for like 6 years now, or 5 years. But yeah, like that's like the worst part. And like they don't even establish an affair. Like I remembered them establishing an affair, or even getting even close to where like something unfaithful may happen. Like it never even gets close to that point. And I remembered it getting closer to that point and actually happening a lot more. It really only happens like 4 or 5 times throughout the entire season.
Was it the last season where, I guess, spoilers for one of the last seasons of The Office? I guess that doesn't matter because Justin just talked about it. But what's the one where, like, Andy becomes the boss and he tries to date the girl from The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and he goes on a boat with, like, his brother and leaves her and then comes back? What season is that?
That's the last season.
I hated that season. I couldn't even finish it.
Yeah.
Like, the whole, like, making Andy the boss thing just, man, really dramatically does not work for me.
Yeah, it's a chunk of season 8, and then it goes on throughout season 9, I suppose. I don't think season 9 it's probably the worst season of The Office. But I remember specifically, I think, saying that like it's not very good and that it's bad. But I think it's plenty watchable, and I think the good outweighs the bad.
I just think that the quality went down greatly. Dramatically after Michael Scott or Steve Carell left the...
It still made me laugh with the season with James Spader, but once James Spader left and that redheaded woman from Doctor Who came in,
I didn't like her the first time.
Unwatchable after that.
Catherine Tate is her name.
Yeah.
But I didn't like her the first time I watched her, but this time I found her a little bit more enjoyable. At least once she settles in and she becomes like a regular employee, when they actually have her trying to be boss and being like a main character as opposed to like just a side character that's
like
in
another
and out.
Phyllis
like,
or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. When she's in that role, I think she's pretty good and funny.
Yeah.
But it takes them a while to get her into that role.
Yeah. I remember when I stopped watching, it's like they couldn't tell who they wanted to be the main character more, Andy or Dwight. And neither one of them were like people I wanted to follow.
Yeah, and it seemed like for a while they chose Andy because he
was in The Hangover.
The most that, or he could be the most Steve Carell or Michael Scott like, where he could be kind of like overly confident but kind of stupid and make like really dumb choices that don't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, just smart enough.
Yeah, which Michael Scott did well, but Andy does not.
Yeah, and that's not to say that there aren't funny moments in the last 4 or 5 seasons that Steve Carell is out of, but ultimately it goes down in quality quite a bit. I really wish that a lot of TV shows, especially network TV shows, knew when to stop, especially now that they are talking about a spin-off of The Office. How do you feel about that, Justin?
I could care less. They could leave it, and I am perfectly happy. If it comes back, I'll probably watch it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it. I wouldn't make sure I'm like there on the night that it premieres. Like, got to be there at like, 7:00 and watch the first episode when it airs. I would just watch it when I could, I guess, maybe. Well, that's it for The Office for me. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is I finally watched Gone Girl, which I guess now that I say it like that, it sounds like I'm saying I finally watched Citizen Kane or something like that. But I've owned it for probably like 2 or 3 years because I found it really cheap at some store. And I remember when it had come out, I don't remember hearing anything about it at the time. Like, I don't remember hearing a lot of like praise for it or a lot of hate for it necessarily. So I was watching it and I kind of thought that because I didn't hear very much about it, that it was just this like movie that wasn't very good and just kind of came and went.
Right.
And I guess to set it up, it's the David Fincher directed movie starring Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, and it's about Ben Affleck's wife, played by Rosamund Pike, who goes missing, and they're trying to figure out where she went and what happened to her, and everyone kind of thinks Ben Affleck killed her and got rid of her. But I started the movie at like 11:30 or so at night, and it's a 2.5 hour movie, and I thought like there's no way I'm going to make it through this whole thing. I'm just going to put it on, probably fall asleep. But I was like engrossed the whole time. I thought it was really, really good, or at least like kept me really, really interested. But the whole time I was kind of like, was this movie something that people didn't like? Like, how
I was thinking, wrong for liking this?
Yeah, that, and also like how is it that this movie didn't get more attention? Like, or I didn't hear much about it. Like, did people not like it? But I don't know. Was this movie
like it got a lot of attention?
Yeah, no, it did. I think you were just out of the loop at that time. Maybe this is like what, October 2014. I think is whenever I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was like when I was like neck deep in grad school, getting ready to do like my thesis film and make a feature film for it. So maybe I was like not paying attention, but I just remember like it was a really interesting experience because I was like kind of sitting there like, am I insane? Like,
yeah, how did I miss this?
Yeah, like this movie is so good and nobody's talking. Maybe just nobody's talking about it because it's 4 years on or 3 or 4 years on, and it didn't like necessarily stay in the mind. But I think it's really good.
Yeah, it is
absolutely. Really, I think it's on the higher end of Fincher's work.
Yeah, I actually have a
definitely
question for you. So. Typically, when we talk, you don't like David Fincher very much. How did you feel about how it was shot and David Fincher's choices?
That was the other surprising thing, was that because I haven't liked some of his stuff. I thought it was shot like the cinematography didn't do anything for me, and I guess that's the area where I start to get like contentious about David Fincher. Is that there's always this big deal made about the way that things look that he shoots because he does he's his own DP, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't know. I know he's very meticulous. I can look up David Fincher.
Oh no, I think I might be getting that mixed up with Steven Soderbergh.
Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, David Soderbergh or Steven Soderbergh certainly is, but David Fincher, I think he's just very, very particular.
I guess like I remember when like House of Cards came out, it was a big deal, and like Social Network. I remember hearing a lot about like the cinematography. That's where I get kind of contentious with him, and I think like people seemed to be talking about that stuff more than the actual content of the movie. At least like with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and maybe it's just the people I was talking to.
Maybe, but if I remember correctly, the two movies I'm thinking of, I don't remember Social Network the way it looks too much, but I remember Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Zodiac. I thought they looked really good. So I'm going to push back a little bit and say that I do think the cinematography in David Fincher movies usually is pretty good. It looks like it's minimal, but it's not, you know? I don't know. I think his use of like dark colors, that doesn't make sense, dark colors, but like his use of like just darkness in all of his shots, I find very appealing. But I don't think it's not like Roger Deakins, you know, or it's not.
It's almost different. It's not
Christopher Nolan movies or anything.
Yeah, it's a cinematography almost of the plane. Does that make sense? Like it seems plain, but like Mike said, there's a lot more to it than it just being
like
plain.
It's like
for sure
the colors themselves. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's good cinematography. Don't get me wrong. Like it kind of to me, his cinematography always stands out of the way, even when he's going beyond to do like things like in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, they did a lot of like CG snow and adding buildings, probably in all of his films really. But I like specifically watched a special feature on the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff on that special feature.
But when he does that stuff, it's all to like make cinematography that doesn't stand in the way of the film. But I guess like where I was being contentious or fighting back, I guess, was that it seemed like people were talking about his cinematography first, and that never felt right to me.
No,
you
definitely.
Know what I mean? Like
story first,
story and characters, and I think the story and the characters in some of the other films aren't that good, but people talked about the films that they were great because of like the cinematography.
Sure, I think you spent too much time in film school.
Probably
now that you're out in the real world, you'll start to have a more level-headed view.
Sure.
Speaking of which, Mindhunters is really good. Have you seen any of that, Mike?
Yeah, I've watched the whole first season. Mindhunter on Netflix is produced by David Fincher, so it has that look.
It does.
I think he directed a couple episodes. Have you seen any of it, Justin?
I saw the whole first half of the first episode.
I think he directed the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I believe so. Sorry. So you really like Gone Girl?
Yeah. Surprising to me, I guess, but I thought it was really great and really, really interesting and a pretty well crafted, like, I guess thriller or mystery would probably be the better word of like what's going to happen next. And even when like you get some answers as to what's going on, they only create like more answers up until like the movie's done. And so it's just really interesting the whole way through.
Yeah. I'm not going to give anything away, but the last line of that movie kind of like shook me. Yeah, I can't say any more, but it's such a great last line, especially about marriage. I thought it was really awesome. All right.
Okay. That's it for me.
And without further ado, let's move on to Peter Strickland's Berberian Sound Studio from 2012.
It's beautiful, and a big collaboration begins.
I didn't quite know I'd be working on this sort of film.
What's your problem?
I'll do this stuff. After all, you're here to do a job.
This is not a horror film. This is a Santini film.
All right, this week we're reviewing the film that was chosen by the winner of the Oscar bet, Corbin, my arch nemesis. It is Berberian Sound Studio, directed by Peter Strickland and starring Toby Jones. A brief synopsis is, a sound engineer's work for an Italian horror studio becomes terrifying case of life imitating art. So, Justin, what did you think of the film?
All right, so real quick, before I give that one, I want to say we're going to do non-spoilers and then spoilers, so we'll give you a spoiler alert warning before we move into those. But also I wanted to talk about the Google synopsis of the film, which is totally different from the IMDb synopsis.
Or the movie.
Or the movie, yeah. The Google synopsis says that a sound engineer tortures his actors in order to get the sounds he needs to make his movie. And I would say that is a very inaccurate synopsis.
Yeah, I would say for the most part that's pretty inaccurate. We can get more into how it might be accurate later, but that is not representative of the overall movie. No, I agree.
No.
100%.
No, it isn't. Before we get into what we thought, but do we want to talk about the idea of watching the film with or without subtitles?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, because Corbin, our listener, said to me that we should watch the film without subtitles, because in the film, the sound engineer, Toby Jones, is English, so he speaks English, and everybody else in the movie speaks a lot of Italian, and he does not. Yeah, and he doesn't speak Italian, so Corbin's suggestion was make sure you watch the film without subtitles, because there are versions out there that have the Italian subtitled for you.
Right. This movie is streaming on Hulu, and if you just stream it, it'll automatically bring up the subtitles. I do believe, in my research, it was meant to be played without subtitles.
Which is the only reason I agreed to that.
Right.
Because I'm all about watching the movie as it was intended. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know what I was going to do when Corbin said he wanted us to watch it without subtitles. I was so torn. And then Chris, you did some research and found out that the theatrical release didn't have subtitles at all. So I was like, all right, okay, I feel okay about this now.
Yeah, which it makes sense. I think like the idea behind it is that the main character doesn't speak Italian, so to be in the mindset and to be going along with the ride with the main character, there should be no subtitles on the Italian.
Right, that makes sense, except for the main character is having a terrible time this whole movie.
Yeah, which also sucks for the Italian people because they can't get that feeling.
The Italian people?
Italian people.
Wow.
Wait, is Italian people not?
No, Italian is correct. Italian is pretty country.
Yeah. More country than I ever knew that you were. But now I know. Cat's out of the bag.
Isn't that similar to Itania? Like they're from the same place?
Yeah, it's Itania.
Itania
is the actual correct pronunciation of that one.
All right.
Okay, so for the movie, I was not really sure what to expect. I didn't watch a trailer for it. I'd never even heard of it before. My girlfriend and I watched it together. We thought it was kind of got the idea that it was going to be this sort of dark mystery like early on in the film. And I think early on I was interested in what was going on for maybe the first like 40 minutes or so. I was going along with the ride. As the movie progressed, I became increasingly less interested and less curious about what was coming next and what happened. So it kind of lost me as it goes on. It's a film that you definitely have to watch with watch while thinking about the movie. You know, you have to have an active mind, I think, to watch it. You can't just like passively watch it and watch the plot unfold. It's a very...
What little plot there is.
Yeah, it's a very loose plot. I think I'm kind of lukewarm on the movie at best at this point, but I also think that might be the only way that I can feel, or that one can really feel about this movie when you watch it for the first time and have like no idea what to expect. Like I almost feel like I wasn't quite prepared to watch it, and maybe a second viewing I would know what I was in for and be able to like view it differently.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I have a very similar reaction to you. I was into it. I was there for probably about 2/3 of the movie. And the last third, we'll talk about later, it gets better upon reflection, but it's not fun in the moment when you're watching it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of, like a lot of uncomfortable score in this movie. Like, the score is really nuts, and it's like, it's there to make you, like, uncomfortable. And so when that transitions in between scenes, it really gives it an uncomfortable vibe the whole time, but it also makes the pace feel weird, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is a film that requires attention to be paid to. It's a mood piece, really, I think. Like, it's definitely something that's light on plot, heavy on mood.
Very heavy on mood.
And it's a thing that you have to kind of immerse yourself in. I think that Justin's not wrong about there may or may not be more things to be unearthed in this movie, but that you can't get at upon a first viewing, right? There were things that I thought were really fun or really enjoyable, and And I think the last third is a part of the movie that we're going to have a good discussion about because we've all mentioned it. But I actually liked watching it without the subtitles. I think that was really interesting. Later on, I went and actually watched some scenes with the subtitles on it, and there was a marked difference not being able to understand what they were saying.
I can imagine.
And coming up with what they're saying in your head, because it was much more sinister what they were saying in my head, than what they were actually saying. So I actually like that I watched it without the subtitles. I felt that added to the mood and the threat that the Italians represented, or the isolation that Toby Jones felt. So yeah, definitely an interesting movie, one that'll be fun to kind of dive into in spoilers, I think, a little bit. But yeah, that was kind of my experience.
Real quick, we watched some of it earlier together. You showed me a little bit of it with the subtitles, and like what they're saying like isn't remotely terrifying or like in any sort of way like negative or mean or
he's kind of
hateful,
bullying the actresses.
Like it feels, yeah.
He's like, you guys can't. Oh, well, there was the one where they're talking about what they're representing on screen, and maybe I shouldn't say this now, but it talked about hot poker penetrating the vagina. So they are talking about things that are happening on screen that we don't see, that we don't know about, but it was still more sinister not knowing what they're saying.
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't watch any scenes with the actual subtitles on, but I kind of got that feeling. I was like, well, because I knew there were versions with subtitles out there, so every time like two Italian people would start screaming at each other or like, or whatever, I was just wondering, like, I wonder if they're like,
what they're actually saying.
Yeah, I bet they're just like talking to each other and not having anything to do with like our protagonist, but that's what you do. Like if you're ever around someone who doesn't speak the same language as you and they're talking to someone else and they're like yelling at each other or like giggling or something like that, your first thought is always like, oh, is this at my expense?
Right.
Yeah. And so you're there in the main character's shoes, right? You're there like, oh man, do they hate him? Are they all like, talking about how much they hate this guy behind his back, right? Like when he's still in the same room with them, It
reminded me of a Simpsons episode. I don't know what else is happening in the rest of the episode, but there's a bit where they see like two, I think German guys, maybe Russian, I'm pretty sure German though, playing chess, and one of them beats the other, and they start like yelling at each other in German, and they like hit the chessboard out, but like if you read the subtitles, they're like, that was an incredible game, you're an amazing player. Thanks, friend. Legitimately, that's like the difference between not watching the subtitles and the subtitles for me.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting experiment. We talked about pushing the envelope earlier, and I think that this is a thing that pushes the envelope whether I enjoy the final result or not. It is certainly something that I had not seen before in this way, so I appreciate it for that. Did you want to talk about some of the subtitles or how you enjoyed the movie, Mike, without the subtitles?
So yeah, I enjoyed aspects of it watching it without subtitles, especially since that's the way the director intended it. I found it to be profoundly frustrating at times, and I feel like sometimes it made the movie unnecessarily slow feeling whenever it didn't necessarily need to be.
Do you mean like there are times where like the scenes where they're speaking Italian and we have no idea what they're saying like went on longer than they needed to, or seemed long?
They felt like they went on longer because you can't understand what they're
excruciatingly so at times, I feel. There are times whenever characters literally have like 3 minutes of dialogue completely in Italian, and then we cut to our protagonist who's just blinking at them. You know what I mean? And it's like, God, I get it. You don't know what's going on, but I want to know what's going on. At least more than I do. But the thing is, you're able to pick it up. There's never a point in the movie where if you don't have subtitles, you won't be able to parse what is happening.
And I don't think that you necessarily need to know what they're saying. And I understand what you mean and why it's frustrating to you, Mike. But I think it does a good job of putting us in his shoes, right? And also, I felt a threat, or
I didn't. I felt like the protagonist of the movie, and I felt like the whole time he was extremely unprofessional and ungrateful.
I never got that.
I don't know. I was in it with him for a little while, but there came a certain point where I didn't understand anything he was doing. But I would like to talk more about that in spoilers.
Yeah, but before we get into that, I guess other films that I would compare to this movie to, like if anyone's thinking about watching this, I think if you really, really like some of the less narrative David Lynch stuff, like things like Eraserhead.
Inland Empire,
yeah.
Inland Empires are very good. Actually, Inland Empire is a lot crazier than this one, though. But
yeah, and for like the Criterion folk, the Last Year at Berrien Bad, if you guys have seen that, it's one that's kind of like that, where it's very much like a big sort of a puzzle, I guess, trying to figure out what's going on, and I guess like a little surreal in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. David Lynch is a good companion to these movies. Probably influenced this movie, in fact.
For sure.
All right, yeah, I agree. David Lynch makes a lot of sense for the vibe and everything that this movie gives off. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about, or are we ready to go into spoilers?
Let's dive into spoilers.
I'm ready to go into spoilers. I've tried beating around the bush.
Let's do it. All right, that was it.
Yeah, that's it. Spoiler alerted.
So, who wants to go first with their thoughts on spoilers?
Well, one thing that I did want to ask you guys about, and maybe I'm jumping the gun and moving the conversation a little too far forward. If I am, walk me back. But they never actually show any clips of the movie that he's editing, like throughout the movie. I guess arguably towards the end, he's on the screen, and the stuff that has happened to him ends up on the screen. But I assume that's kind of like surreal, dreamy, and that's not the actual movie. But I thought that was actually another interesting choice. It's a bit like withholding the language barrier from us.
It's almost more intriguing or more horrifying because it allows you to imagine what's on the screen as they are smashing these vegetables and fruits. You hear it, and you're just imagining what is on screen. What I'm imagining is probably far worse than what they could put on the screen, right? I found that really interesting. They do show you a little bit about what the movie is, I think, in the credits.
And I think it also helps to be familiar with, like, Italian giallo movies.
Yeah, the Italian horror movies.
Right, yeah, like Suspiria or anything Mario Bava or other movies Dario Argento has done. You know, like those really bloody, really violent, exploitative movies, you know?
Yeah, I guess, do you like that element of it, or like that technique of like not showing? Do you think that worked for you, or would you rather have seen some of the movie clips? Even like, I feel like if I had seen some of the movie clips, it might have given me a bit of like footing, at least like something to put my foot down and have like a grounding at least. Like it would have been one like concrete thing that I could have had. I don't necessarily think that would be better or worse.
Yeah, I like that I didn't see anything on the screen personally, and mainly because my imagination can run wild. I hear them smashing the watermelons, and I can only imagine what's happening on screen. And they also show the timing log of what's supposed to happen. Like one of the girls falls out the window, right. One of the girls goes splat, and you hear the sound effects as it's happening. Yeah.
I think it would have been fun though to see, like, because I don't know, those films, if you've ever seen any of them, or if you ever have any kind of affection for them, they feel so different than any horror now, right? Like I would have liked to have seen some of that like 70s blood that was like a little too light red, you know, that all those movies had, and like the cheesiness of them all. Like I would have liked to have seen them try to recreate the look and feel of some of those 70s like Italian cheap exploitative
I
movies.
understand that point of view. I just don't know that if that's important to this film.
No, it's probably not important, but it would have been fun.
I understand.
Yeah. I think having fun was probably one of the last intentions of this filmmaker.
That's probably true.
I would say that at no point was any of it fun or intended to be fun.
But it feels like an homage to those types of movies, though.
I had fun at the end where he walks through the door and then he's on the screen. Those dreamlike sequences at the end, I enjoyed. I don't know that I necessarily understand them, but they were fun to watch. I don't know if you guys feel the same way about it or not, but I like that kind of style where, you know, he walks from one door and then all of a sudden he's up on the movie screen. It's just kind of this surreal. I don't know that necessarily that it fits in with the rest of the movie, but I enjoy those kinds of sequences in general.
Yeah, I think those images and like the sound and a lot of the filmmaking techniques are like fun, but I think at that point in the movie where those actually come about, that whole mood and vibe of the film had sort of overstayed its welcome with me by that point. So I think it was a little harder for me to enjoy.
I could see that. I think I was just welcoming of it because of the exact same thing that you said.
Right, same situation, but opposite reaction. That makes sense. Right. That makes sense. I get
like
that.
I could do something fun now or whatever.
See, fun was the last thing I thought that was. I found it profoundly frustrating when that started happening, more than fun. Because, like, once I saw, like, oh, he's up on the screen now it's going to stop making sense altogether, instead of just making sense most of the time. And whereas, like, you were, like, welcoming of that, I find movies when they abandon narrative structure in the middle of the movie, I find that to be, I don't want to say, like, I don't want to put, like, as a rule, like, I never enjoy when this happens. But I found it to be very frustrating. Especially because I was already spent a good amount of time trying to figure out what was going on, trying to piece together what other people were saying to him, only to find out that, like...
Only to have the rug pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah, only to have the rug pulled out from under you, and then it's like, surprise, you're not supposed to know what's going on. I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like how you said that when we reviewed Sallow, you were saying that's just not what you're looking for in a movie when it comes to, like, torture or abuse of people or violence or things like that, the uncomfortable nature of what the content in that movie.
Right.
I find movies like this to be hard for me to do. Not necessarily frustrating, but hard for me personally to enjoy. I had the same kind of thing with Inland Empire and Eraserhead.
Yeah, I actually remember being really excited about Inland Empire. This is when we all worked at Blockbuster together. Mm-hmm. And I came to the two of you and I was like, you guys have got to watch this movie. And then you guys watched it and hated it.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I like Mulholland Drive. I like Blue Velvet. I like movies that make me think when there's enough of a narrative foothold for me to do so.
Right.
And enough for me to, like, start putting pieces together. That's fun for me. Movies,
it's a very fine line, though, too.
It is a very, very fine line. So, like, the thing is, it's like, I can't even promise that, like, I wouldn't enjoy this movie more upon a second viewing. I just know that my first viewing
was not very enjoyable.
Was a trial. Not even not enjoyable. Just work. I felt like it was work, you know?
Yeah, I understand that.
That being said, though, there were elements of the movie, and I've been pretty hard on it so far, there were elements I enjoyed quite a bit. I thought Toby Jones was fantastic in this movie.
I agree wholeheartedly. Toby Jones.
Yeah, he's usually like this, like, weaselly little villain. You know?
Yeah, he has this sad puppy dog face that as he like stares at these people speaking in Italian, and you're right, he blinks, and you're just like, I don't know, I liked him a lot.
He's got big eyes, and he's got an interesting face, and it's cool to see him not be the villain in a Marvel movie, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I really enjoyed getting to spend more time with this guy than I usually get to spend, and I think he is well up to holding a movie all on his own.
Yeah, hopefully someday he gets his due.
Yeah, I think without a performance like Toby Jones and everything he's doing in it, this movie would be an even more difficult trial to watch.
Yeah, without somebody that's so interesting to engage with, it would be hard.
I think some of the other performances, I don't know that anybody did enough. I guess like the other major one would be the guy that he's working with a lot, not the director, but I'm not totally sure who he was. Was he a producer?
The bearded guy?
Santini was the director.
Yeah.
He would come in every once in a while. I think the producer's the one that would always berate him.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what they're doing is interesting. I don't know how much of their performance relies on us filling in the blanks of everything they're not doing. Like they're not really doing a lot, I guess.
Well, it's hard for us to understand what they're doing, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like their performance kind of has to be pretty minimal, I think, so that we can fill in all of these blanks around them and fill in like what they're doing. So I don't know. Nobody made much of an impression on me as far as like other performances. I don't know about you guys.
Well, yeah, I kind of touched on this earlier, and I'll bring it back around now. Whereas I said I felt like the main character was unprofessional. I feel like when he got there, yeah, there's a discrepancy with his pay. Sure, I understand being frustrated about that. I would have been too. But as soon as he gets there, he proceeds to be like, "Oh, I misunderstood what this movie was. Oh, I don't like horror movies. Oh, I'm gonna pout."
I don't know that he ever said that he didn't like horror movies. He's just surprised that it was a horror movie.
Yeah, well, he was like, The intention when he like brought it up though was like to imply to the director, I'm uncomfortable.
I didn't get that, and I'm not like saying that your reading is wrong. My reading was when he talked to the director, he was surprised. He's like, "Oh, I thought this was a horse movie, not a horror movie."
Sure,
and as soon as he says horror movie, the director's like, "This is not a horror movie."
Sure, that's true.
This is a Santini film.
That's true, but once he's like working on it, you see him just like sulking. And I understand he doesn't like horror movies. He's clearly a squeamish guy. He's
uncomfortable as opposed to sulking.
Right. He's used to nature documentaries. You know, he's got a letter from his mom talking about birds.
Right.
Right. So clearly he's a big softie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get that, but I also feel like I don't blame these Italian movie makers for being very frustrated with him in the movie, because like he's like, I'm gonna quit after you paid for me to come out here. Or I guess they haven't paid him yet, but you know what I mean. Like. He's like, he doesn't want to participate. He's kind of sulky. He doesn't want to follow directions.
Well, I think that he walks in there, you know, he doesn't seem enthused at any point. Like, he doesn't seem like he's ready to work and ready to, like, create something and be a part of the process. It always seems like a chore for him, like a task for him. And I don't know if that is something that was built for his character from, like, previous work, because he's obviously older, maybe been in the profession a while, but I agree with you, Mike. I think like it seems like once from the time that he walks in the door, he doesn't seem ready to just be a team player and be a part of it.
Man, I just didn't get that. Like he's outside of the loop, and that's why he's not part of the group. He's waiting for them to kind of tell him what to do, and he feels outside of the group because he doesn't know what they're saying in Italian. And every time he does try to say something, they yell at him for saying it. That's just that was what I got from it. I felt a lot more sympathy for this guy than I guess either one of you guys. But
yeah.
and that's okay.
Also,
I'm not trying to...
why would you accept a job in Italy and go there if you don't speak any Italian and expect them not to be frustrated with you for not following their directions?
And everything you're saying, I saw that too, but like that just was built on top of like the foundation that he already didn't seem to be like willing to be friendly and into it and like part of the team.
Sure. And I'm you know, I'm being a little too nitpicky there. Sure. I'll admit that. But yeah, but basically what Justin said is like once he arrives, he doesn't seem like he's into it and doesn't want to give them the chance. But that's also, you know, it's partly their fault too, because like I said, they're not paying him. He does feel isolated, and he didn't understand. He like, what was the name of the movie? The Equestrian.
I don't know. I actually never really caught any of the details about the movie. I don't even think I caught like the horse horror line.
Well, basically, he thought he was doing like a horse documentary, and then he gets there, and it's like a horror movie with no horses or something like that. But it's not a horror movie according to the director. So I can understand being like, oh boy, what have I gotten into, you know? And he even tried to quit, and the director, like, shamed him into staying, you know? I know you asked earlier about whether or not seeing the movie would have helped, and I think it would have, because I think it would have lent us a little bit more insight into his state of mind. We see him chopping up cabbages and breaking apart various vegetables and stuff like that to create sound effects, and they sound really gruesome. And the movie does an excellent job of making those plants being busted apart and all those different things that he's doing to make those like gory sound effects. They do a great job of making those like everyday items sound disgusting. And they do a really great job of kind of letting you know how Foley sound in movies is made.
And Foley sound being just explained.
Foley sound being sound that is put in entirely after the movie has been shot. Like most Italian movies up to a certain point were filmed completely MOS, which means like no sound at all. Mm-hmm. And all the sound, including dialogue and everything, was always added in later. Fellini did this, you know, these Italian movies did this. What's what he's doing? They're recording.
Salo was done that way?
Salo was done that way, exactly. So that's what they're doing. They're recording everything, the entire movie's audio. So he has his work cut out for him. That being said, though, he is so affected by what he is creating the sound for because he is so unprepared. You know, he wanted a horse documentary and he got apparently a very gory movie. And I think even just flashes of what he's seeing that affect him so much would have helped me personally. It's not necessary because his performance is fine and the sound effects are great with what he's actually creating. So you get the idea like, okay, he's creating something really gory. you know? And we saw some of the cards on that board showing like, okay, woman falls out window, you know, woman gets stabbed, woman...
Right.
His skull breaks open or whatever, you know? So we know that there's lots of gross stuff that he's recording the audio for. But just for the overall vibe and tone of losing his sanity, I think it would have... I don't know, I think it would have been nice to see a little bit of what was affecting him so much.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I guess I just disagree, though. I like it without the...
And that's fine. Like, and I'm not even 100% sold on that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, as I say it, it doesn't sound as good as when I was watching it, whenever I was like, I wish I could see what he was doing.
Right. We also do get, in the credit sequence, the credits for Equestrian Vortex, which is the name of the
Right,
film,
and that's what
so.
prepared me for something else, I think. I thought I was going to get more of that based on the credits. You know, I was expecting something like a Dario Argento movie. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. Mm-hmm. Instead, I felt like the credits didn't deliver on the promise of that tone.
Yeah, do you think that basically what it would do by seeing some of it is let you in on whether or not he's, for lack of maybe a more eloquent term, but like he's just kind of a wimp when it comes to gruesome movies, or is there actually something unsettling on the screen?
Right, like if he's creating the sound for Sallow, that's one thing. But if he's creating the sound for like Zombie,
Right.
Well, but I think that's up to you, right? That's in your imagination. It's where your imagination
but
goes.
it also maybe, but
or maybe they didn't establish.
that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like it's hard for me to say. Like I just feel like I got profoundly frustrated watching our protagonist not finish his job or not even like attempt to finish the job after a while, because I don't know, I was just into finishing the movie. I was into the story of like these guys want to finish this movie, and instead we get like a story about a guy losing his sanity, you know.
Do you think that any of that comes from like the fact that we went to film school and have made films, and like
Maybe.
you really sympathize with these people, like they just want to make their film? I don't know.
Yeah, quit fucking it up, guy.
Jesus, let them do their thing.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's why I'm saying like I want to watch it again, but I don't want to watch it again, if that makes sense. Like I feel like watching it again could help me see more. I'd like watch it in subtitles now that I've seen it the other way. Now that you guys were kind of talking about it earlier, because now I kind of want to see
What they were actually saying.
yeah, what really is going on, because like I still don't know.
It does change it. And actually, an interesting point that kind of moves us along in the plot, the very last, like, 8 minutes or so, we're all in Italian. He starts speaking Italian as well.
It felt like 20 minutes.
Yeah, it is quite a long time, or it feels like a long time. But
For no subtitles at all.
Right,
It's
and
an excruciatingly long time.
Right, and they're all talking in Italian. And what actually happens is, so they're trying to get this performance out of this girl, and when I watched it without the subtitles, it looked like it was his idea to kind of torture her into a good performance, where he turns up the sound or the reverb or something on it.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. I thought he was just losing his mind, so he
Yeah.
was just like, I'm going to make her suffer.
Well, in the subtitles, it's actually the producer is pressuring him into. He's like, turn it up more, and then so it's the producer pressuring him into it. So it's such an interesting experiment, whether it works for you or not. Like watching it without subtitles and then watching it with subtitles, and I think that actually would work for any subtitled movie, you know. But in this one, I think
I don't know about that, man. I wouldn't want to watch a movie completely in another language.
Right, no, and I agree with that. But it would be an interesting experiment to see what you get out of it without subtitles, and then you like tell somebody this is what this movie's about, and then you watch it with subtitles, and you see how close you are actually to what it is about, you know. But anyways, that last scene is him just being pressured into torturing him, and I was the same way as you. I thought that he was losing his mind and just wanted out of there and was trying to get the best performance out of her.
Yeah, I was unsure during that scene. I couldn't tell if he was being pressured or if he was doing it out of like, I'm ready for this job to be over. I need to get this so that I can move on and keep the work going and get it done with. And so he was just going to extremes to that point. And also, like, that's the only time that any sort of torturing
actually
an
happens,
actor
right.
or actress happens too. So I thought maybe we might build from there and go on to more, but that's kind of the apex.
Yeah.
Google synopsis, you let us down.
Yeah. So there's the Google synopsis tying back in. synopsizes that last 5 minutes very well.
Let me ask you real quick, why do you think it's in Italian? Why does he start speaking in Italian?
Yeah, so that's entering the part of the movie where it goes full on Lynch.
Right.
I don't know if it's supposed to like imply that he's lost his sanity prior to the movie ever starting, and we're just now picking up on that, because we do have the whole scene where he finally gets a hold of the people he needs to in order to get his like airplane flight from England reimbursement, and that person tells him, yeah, we called like the airplane and there's no flight on that day, like that record is not there. Like that's why I started to think like, oh well, maybe he's been here the whole time. And then from that point on, I believe it's from that point on he's speaking Italian.
I don't know if it's from that point on, but yeah, it's very close.
It's shortly thereafter. So I, on a really simple level, took it as he's actually maybe Italian, and like long before we could have ever guessed that he had lost his sanity. I don't know that I like that, or that I necessarily think that's great. Like that was the one point of the movie that I would say maybe felt a little cliche.
And I don't know if this makes any more sense, right? But maybe it's like he's getting so into the movie at this point, a movie that he finds excruciating to work on. Like he hates every second of it, you know? So maybe so like I think it all starts when he's in his bed, right? And someone's like knocking on the door, and that's kind of when it all starts going nuts.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So he's basically he's imagining himself in the movie, kind of, at that point. Is kind of how I took it. And from that point on, he starts speaking Italian, and what's real and what's not real becomes very confusing. And so I kind of took it as like he has changed. Like he has, I don't know, maybe basically like, I don't know, slayed the part of himself that, I don't know. Maybe he's adapted. I don't know.
I think the letters from his mom have something to do with it too.
Right. Yeah. Because when he gets the letter saying that like all the
birds have died,
are dead because something got to them,
and they didn't even eat the birds; they just slaughtered them for no reason.
She basically just like describes the carnage of it all.
Right. I also think there is a possibility, and this is kind of a cop out, but. It's a dream / AKA he's been in his own little studio this whole time doing the sound for this movie, and he just slowly lost his mind. You know, like in this, you know, they show that little shed that's basically his studio, and he's just kind of slowly lost his mind working on this all by himself out there.
Yeah, and I think the letters are actually our one foothold we have as to like a sense of how much time has passed, because that's one thing the movie makes very unclear is how long he's been there. And you know, because then sometimes we have scenes where like he's looking in one direction and he sees something, and then when we cut back to him, he's like
doing something
back
else.
in the sound studio doing something else, like without any sort of like transition or hint that we're getting a transition from scene to scene. So like time and time passage becomes very
dreamlike,
very dreamy. Yeah, for sure. And those letters, I guess if you assume that they're real, do give us the sense of like, okay, she misses him. How was your flight? I think is like the first letter. And then we find out there are birds there. Then we get more report on the birds. And eventually the birds get killed. So it's kind of this sense of like, okay, he's been there for a while.
Spring, summer, fall type thing.
Which is exactly, yeah. And so I thought that was actually a pretty interesting touch, while still like maintaining like the mood of the movie and not feeling like a device as much. I don't know that it helps you unlock anything from the movie.
I don't know that.
I just think it was
necessarily in a movie like
some sort of grounding.
I don't know that in a movie like this you actually need the answers. So, you know, you want them sometimes, but I don't know that the point of this movie is to have answers, right?
Sure, but is that satisfying?
Exactly. Yeah, I know what you mean. That's why this movie frustrates you to no end, as opposed to Solo frustrating me because I just don't like that horror aspect of it. And this one, you just can't stand the no answer aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
Not even necessarily the no answer, but the no structure.
Right.
Like, I don't necessarily take anything away from not knowing if it's a dream or real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from that. Like, if you guys could tell me if you took away anything from this movie, maybe it could help me understand what I'm supposed to take away from it and, like, why you enjoyed it. You know what I mean?
Is it a personal thing? Like, is everybody supposed to kind of take away their own thing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I didn't even. That's the thing is like I can't even fathom what to take away from this movie.
I feel like it's too specific for every person to take away
Their
own sort of meaning. Like I think they'd maybe like slight variations of like a similar.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
A similar meaning. I think what it comes down to, like personally, is whether or not you enjoy the ride of this film, right?
I agree.
Like because it is very moody. I think it's very successful to a large degree in terms of like the filmmaking techniques it uses. Mike, earlier you said the sound design. You were talking about that and like how they do a really good job with some of that. Like, and the score was mentioned earlier about how it keeps you unsettled constantly. The performance by Toby Jones is really good. So I think like all of the filmmaking is really well done and on point. But I think it comes down to, do you enjoy this type of movie? Are you going to enjoy a type of movie that like has you constantly unsettled and unsure of anything and leaves you with no grounding and no answers?
Yeah, does
that work for you? Then you'll probably like it, I think.
Yeah, does all that add up to a good movie? You know, and I don't know. And I think I could see, you know, I could see falling on either side of this, and I don't think that and I don't begrudge anybody falling on either side.
Yeah, I think at a certain point I might be in the mood to watch this movie again. I think in our situation, we didn't know anything about it. We kind of had to watch it, you know, because it was chosen for us to do for this episode. So we had to watch it by, today to record this. And maybe in a scenario where we were excited or had like the desire to watch that type of movie. Cause I had the desire to watch Eraserhead again. And I felt pretty much the same way about Eraserhead as I did Berberian Sound Studio when both movies were over on my first viewing, right?
Right, exactly.
And I've had that desire for Eraserhead again, and that may come with this movie again in time. I think it's very possible. I think you have to be in the mood for what it is. Sure.
Well, even talking about it now makes me want to watch it more than I did when it was over the first time. Mm-hmm. And in talking about you like with the subtitles, like here's the thing: is like this movie is probably one of the only movies I can think of that like. I felt so strongly about it when it was over, but just a day later, I'm willing to watch it again if I can watch the subtitled version. You know what I mean? Like, I've never had a movie where, like, I'd watch it again if it were just this one thing were different. Like, there's not many movies that, like, didn't click with me, that stayed with me enough to where I felt like they merited a second viewing. And I feel like this one, I'm not even comfortable saying I didn't like it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I fall either, and I understand how you feel about it. It's just this weird movie that at times felt really tense and oppressive, and then at sometimes made you really frustrated, right?
Right. So like I got sleepy by the end of it.
Ooh.
Like I was just like, oh man, I'm struggling to get my foothold. But then when it was over, my mind was racing. But the whole time it was happening until it ended, I was like, Jesus, more Italian, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's this type of movie to me is like a really weird thing where it's kind of like Eraserhead. When it was over, I didn't want to watch it again. But there have been times since I watched Eraserhead or since I watched Inland Empire where I've been like, I could watch those again. You have to be in the mood, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'll say is that what I was expecting at a certain point in the movie, I was like, okay, this movie's just building. It's basically crescendoing, which crescendo I think is mainly a musical term, but it's a rise in the music that like rises up to a certain point and then the music goes on.
For the climax,
it rises to a climax basically. And I felt like this movie was full crescendo and we never hit climax to a certain extent. Like I felt like it wound me up and winds you up and winds you up with all of this mood and detail and sound and questions and just never actually releases you. I don't know, maybe the release is like talking about it, because I feel a little bit, like you said, better about it talking about us, or at least like I would be interested to watch it again, you know?
Yeah.
So I can maybe talk about it further. But I feel like that's that type of movie. It's just full crescendo, no actual climax, no like beat drop or anything.
Right. Like, it seems like the extent of it is he comes here, was not prepared for what he got into, got in over his head, and slowly starts to blur the lines between, like, sanity, or blur the lines of his sanity, I guess, and between what's real and what's not. And I don't know that the end was there to tell us anything else, you know? And I feel like the end, I was waiting for like okay, and this is the next thing you're left to think about. But instead, I felt like there was no extra thing at the end to leave me thinking with. So I was just like, oh, okay, well, it's exactly what the movie leading up to this point was.
Yeah, it's more of the same.
Yeah, more of the same.
More of the same build-up. It's just more intense or more bizarre.
Yeah. Can't get any more bizarre, so let's end it.
Right.
Run out of bizarre things to do.
Yeah, I would definitely say if I was going to recommend it, it can be highly frustrating, but like if you're in the mood for like a David Lynchian type film that you're not going to get a lot of answers from, yeah, definitely watch it. I think that there are moments in it that are really tense and suspenseful, very moody movie. It does have the possibility of being very frustrating.
And honestly, we did like the spoiler section, but it's really hard to spoil anything about the movie. Like you could watch it now, I think, and enjoy it.
Very little plot.
Just as much, yeah. Maybe you enjoy it more because you know what you're in for a little bit, and you can pay more attention to certain things and not wait for, moments that you think are coming that never do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, I would really ask yourself, do you enjoy David Lynch? Do you enjoy, what's that guy who did Donnie Darko?
Richard Kelly.
Richard Kelly, yeah. If you enjoyed what he attempted to do, if you enjoy just really surreal, non-linear narratives that are mainly about mood and tone over like linear plot, then this is right up your alley. And there are plenty of people who love those types of movies. And it's a well-made movie, Berberian Sound Studio.
It's well-made, and everything in it that it's doing is really effective.
Yeah, you can clearly hear from this review that we're having a hard time even picking apart things we didn't like.
It's just the style of film that
it's
is
just
frustrating.
It's just an odd duck.
Yeah. I guess, is that it?
I think so.
Yeah. So, Corbin, thank you for recommending this movie. It was certainly an interesting watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you gave us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But you're still my arch nemesis.
But not mine. I think you're cool.
Yeah, I still think you're a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Right. And in the spirit of this movie, we wanted to find out from each of us, like, what is our favorite surrealist movie? And so, Chris, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I picked a movie that I'm not sure is exactly surrealist, but I think it's close enough that it fits. So, The Blow Up, or just Blow Up is the name of it, by Antonioni.
The Blow Up.
The Blow Up. I just like to put "the" in front of a lot of titles.
You do. It makes me laugh every time.
And it's a lot of fun. But
It just makes it sound like it happened one night.
Right. The Blow Up. The Bringing Up Baby is a good example. Anyways, The Blow Up is a great movie by Antonioni.
Michelangelo Antonioni.
Michelangelo, the Ninja Turtle. I don't necessarily need to get into it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good. So it's about this guy that sees a dead body behind a bush, but nobody else sees it. So he's going around trying to convince everybody that he saw a dead body behind this bush. He took pictures of it, or he thought he did, and it's very much about the human experience. And if you see something alone and you don't experience it with another individual, is it real? So if you experience something by yourself, is it real? Or do you have to have a shared experience in order for it to be real? I think it's a very interesting movie to watch, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. I've only seen it once, but it was super interesting, and I've always wanted to watch it again, and I think Criterion just released it
They did.
pretty recently on Blu-ray, which is one reason I took forever to watch it again, and I guess still haven't, but I didn't want to watch it on just like the DVD that I had that I watched it on before. I was like, some point I'm going to come across a Blu-ray.
All right, Mike, what was your pick?
So my pick for a surrealist movie would be 2007's My Winnipeg by Guy Madden. Have you guys seen this movie?
I have.
I have not.
This movie is so unique, as pretty much any of Guy Madden's movies are. So it's filmed in black and white, I believe, for the most part, at least. And it's about Winnipeg and him going around the city of Winnipeg in Canada and going to local establishments and kind of giving this fiction documentary about the town of Winnipeg and everything that goes on there. And it's this really bizarre movie that I saw when I worked at Blockbuster, because whenever it first released on DVD back in 2007, it was actually a Blockbuster exclusive through the Weinstein Company. And so it was this really small indie movie. And I remember I tried to get a couple customers to rent it, and they just hated it. They hated it, and they told me to never recommend anything to them again. But I'm recommending it to everybody who listens to this podcast. Guy Madden's My Winnipeg. It's a fictional, freeform documentary, kind of like F for Fake by Orson Welles, if anyone's ever seen that. But maybe not quite the same. But kind of in the same vein. I would give it a shot. It's not anything like this movie. It's, like I said, it's kind of a documentary more than anything. But it's like a love letter to a place where he grew up. And I think he got the craftsmanship of someone who you can tell really loves the city that they're talking about, you know?
Yeah, I watched it, and it was not at all what I expected, because I kind of knew that's what it was about, but the style of it and the photography and mood is way different than what I expected
else.
At all.
Any of Guy Madden's movies that I've seen have been completely all their own. If you guys ever want to watch something completely unique, look up the saddest music in the world.
Yeah, I have seen that. That's
Brand Upon the Brain is my favorite.
Brand Upon the Brain, yes, that's a really great one. I almost said that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, what about you, Justin?
I'm going to go with another black and white film. It is Last Year at Marienbad. And I don't totally know how to pronounce the director's name, but I think it's Alain Resnais. He's French. And he has a French last name, and I don't know how to say it. But Alain Resnais is my guess. Actually, I think he died relatively recently, like within the last 5 years or so. But Last Year at Marienbad is this surreal film. It's a bunch of people dressed up in tuxedos and fancy dresses in this huge estate with a really, instead of a really fancy manor, and it almost seems like they're all there for a big party, but the movie plays with time and characters. You'll see the same characters doing the same scenes, but in different locations, or slightly different things happen. There's zero plot to it at all. It's just all of these moments and instances, and basically just this giant puzzle. It's like if you could imagine taking a puzzle and dumping it out and just having the pieces all over the floor, and sometimes the pieces overlap and you only see sections of a piece. That's what watching this movie is kind of is looking at all of these little puzzle pieces and trying to put it together and figure out what the heck is going on. And it's a really beautiful movie. There's a lot of mirrors in this house, and there's a lot of an insanely pleasing composition, there's a lot of things that look like paintings. There's a lot of it that actually reminds me of visually of Lars von Trier's Melancholia.
Oh.
Obviously it was made way before that. I think it was made in the 60s. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's one that I think you have to watch over and over again to really glean any meaning from. I've watched it twice to this point, and I still am vastly puzzled by it. Have either of you guys seen it?
I have not.
No, I haven't. I hear it's great though.
Yeah, it's out of print from Criterion. Actually, they released a Blu-ray of it, and I actually have the Blu-ray. I bought it while it was still in print.
Nice. And
now it's out of print, and it's worth some money, but I'll never sell it because I enjoy revisiting it every now and then.
All right, good. I'll never sell it.
Yeah. Well, I'll never say never, I guess, if some other
the price
version
is
of
right.
it. Yeah.
If you
someone
guys have a
offers
price to offer Justin, send it in. Maybe he'll sell it to you.
Someone offers me more money I've ever seen in my life, $200. I'll probably sell
all
it.
at once.
Yeah.
I'm 100 there. I'm 100 there. I don't know if that works.
Is that the end of the episode?
That is the end of the episode.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks, Jake Wagner Russell, for creating our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
So what we're watching next is going to be a casually Criterion episode for Sam Fuller's The Naked Kiss, spine number 18.
I'm excited. I've actually only seen maybe like two or three other Samuel Fuller movies, and none of his like big notable movies, I don't think.
I've seen a couple, and they've all been great. Like most recently I watched The Big Red One with Mark Hamill.
Yeah, that's one of his big ones, and I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's really good. He actually had the perspective of like a real soldier when making war movies, you know? So his war movies, I think, are a little grittier and better and mean a little more than like, some of the other World War II movies and war movies coming out around that time. Also, next week, we are going to watch Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs as a bonus episode. So be on the lookout for that, too.
Was it one of you guys that pointed out that Isle of Dogs, if you say it really fast, sounds like I love dogs?
Isle of Dogs?
I love dogs.
I love dogs.
I love dogs?
I love dogs.
Yeah.
Isle of Dogs?
I don't know if that's intentional, but I really like that.
Oh, I do love dogs.
Yeah, me too. And if you want to ask us questions about these movies we're going to watch, so let us know if there's any like topics you want us to touch on in regards to those movies, you can contact us and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at casualcinemedia. You can join our Facebook group and talk film with us at facebook.com/groups/casualcinemedia, or you can email us directly at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Don't forget about our iTunes contest. You basically have 1 day left if you are listening to this on the day of release. So go ahead and send that in to us. We'd appreciate it. And until next time, we'll see you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
You got to keep that in.